Hello, everybody. How you doing? Howdy to you all. Thanks for throwing howdy into my brain, Robin. Good to see everybody. Thanks for being here. Please, let's have a good goddamn hour where we break through the bullshit that's being passed on by your mainstream media and our government and the lies that they're telling, and we'll get to the bottom of how these criminals operate. How's that sound? Does that sound like a fun hour? Let's do it. I've got so many stories. I'm gonna see how many I can cram into this hour. I'm not very good at like the cramming a bunch of stories in because I always like to get down underneath that surface stuff. I like to dig a little deeper. And so I often get sidetracked. But the sidetracks are the good, important sidetracks that need to happen. So but I'm going to see how many I can cram in here because it's too much going on. Please hit like, share, subscribe, all those things. Leave a comment. Even if you got nothing to say, just throw something in there because it couldn't hurt. And even if you've already subscribed or become a follower or whatever it's called on Rumble and YouTube and everything else, click the bell icon. You got to click the bell icon or nothing happens. All right. Let's go through all this. Poverty, gut-wrenching poverty in 2022, which the numbers have just been crunched, basically. The census has finally put out their numbers. Has surged the highest. This is the highest increase in poverty in American history in 1 year. In the aftermath of pandemic relief, this is from Sheer Post, by the way. They do great work, and you'll see a lot of them at radindymedia.com. In the aftermath of pandemic relief programs, such as increased unemployment, and that confused me at first. He means increased unemployment benefits, increased unemployment and nutrition benefits. And nutrition benefits is a euphemism for saying giving food to fucking people who need it. In the aftermath of pandemic relief programs, greater relief, including, God. See, this is the problem when trying to cram too many stories in. Tripping over my words. Including greater rental assistance and the child tax credit policies, which the Biden administration allowed to expire in 2021. Isn't that nice how you can just like allow human rights abuses to happen and you didn't even have to do anything? I just let go. I just let go of the steering wheel and all these fucking people are hungry and dying. I didn't have to do it. I didn't even push a button. I just didn't renew the thing. So I just let go of the steering wheel and then all these people died and are hungry and poor. Isn't that interesting? He just allowed them to expire. Because those policies expired, Americans have faced the largest 1 year surge in poverty ever recorded. Let me repeat that. The largest 1 year surge in poverty ever recorded, which somehow includes the Great Depression. That apparently did not all happen in 1 year, I guess. I don't know. I don't quite it's amazing. It's amazing that we're this pathetic. That in the richest country in the world, we can send $150 billion to Ukraine to give guns to Nazis. We have money for that, but we don't have money for the largest increase in poverty in American history. We don't have money to deal with that or to help those people. Nope, can't find it. Don't know where it is. We have $100 billion to waste on completely non-functional Navy ships, ultimately only 35 of them. $100 billion dumped into that. Can't find money for the poor in this country. $1 trillion a year on military. Can't find money for the poor in this country. $1 trillion wasted on the F-35 fighter jet. Can't find money for the poor in this country. The Pentagon is $21 trillion. It's really more like $35 trillion now of unaccounted for adjustments on their books over the past 20 years. And it can't find money to help poor people in this country. According to the report from the Census Bureau published on September 12th, the sharpest increase in poverty affected children. According to the report from the Census Bureau, sharpest increase in poverty affected children, with child poverty more than doubling from a record low of 5% to 12.4%. The reason it was at a record low is because we had a greater slightly greater safety net in certain regards during the pandemic. Now, that is not to say they did a good job during the pandemic of making sure everyone was treated well. But in certain areas, such as people getting evicted, there was some degree of eviction freeze for a while, which decreased some hardship. So, I think people would find it, some people might find it contradictory to say, oh, well, the child poverty was at a record low during the pandemic, but also the government, federal government, both Trump and Biden's federal governments did a horrific job of taking care of people during the pandemic. Those two things sound contradictory, but they actually work together fine. You can have certain things working while still, as a whole, they did a shit job of dealing with the pandemic and of actually caring for average Americans with was it 50% or something of businesses like small businesses going out of business. Ultimately, they didn't go out during the pandemic because during that time they could get some help, but then as they've let these things expire, as they've taken their hands off the wheel and watched free market capitalism destroy lives, man has it. So childhood poverty has jumped from 5.2% to 12.4%. This was indicated by the supplemental poverty measure evaluated by the U.S. Census Bureau, which factors in the impact of government assistance and geographical differences in the cost of living. The amount of Americans without health insurance matched a record low last year of 7.9% because the pandemic program, which provided a temporary freeze in Medicaid terminations, did not expire. So during the pandemic, you had a record low number of people without health insurance. And I'll get back to that in a second, why that's still not that great. But record low number of 7.9%. Now that number is jumping up because, again, they've just said, you know what, we'll stop making sure people can get this health insurance. And in fact, millions have been already kicked off of health insurance just this year since they've let those protections expire. Millions, many of them for simply having the paperwork slightly wrong or things like that, being a day late and shit like that, just looking for any reason to kick these people off of health insurance, Medicaid. And but to go back to, it's the lowest percentage ever to not have health insurance. Well, that is better than people not having health insurance. However, let's remember, there shouldn't be a thing called health insurance. There should just be a thing called health care that every fucking American should get. That's how it should work. So yes, it's better to have fewer without health insurance, but also stupid ass system that is designed to exploit us and to enrich a tiny, tiny, tiny number of individuals. So you should just remember that anytime you're celebrating that we have a low number of people on insurance or, off insurance. Median household income adjusted for inflation fell 2.3% in 2022. So again, one of the richest countries in the world. The rich are getting richer than ever, more billionaires than ever. And yet, median household income in this country fell, decreased, child mortality increasing. All of the signs that this is a fading, a waning society, they're all there. They're all there. Inequality increasing. And yet, still, this is one of the richest countries in the world. But those riches are not going to 90% of the people in this country. Median household income fell 2.3% in 2022 at the same time that inflation rose by nearly 8%, which is a lot. Between 2021 and 2022, the largest annual increase in cost of living since 1981. Largest annual inflation increase since 1981. Common pantry, like food banks, like many other food banks, had demand explode during the pandemic and then recede in 2021 when people got their stimulus checks. However, now with many of the protections being abandoned, these food pantries are again seeing a big uptick in those who need food. The New York Times stated that the, quote, financial hardship has declined among Black households. However, that's 100% not true. I'm not sure what the New York, I don't know if they just decided to lie in that moment, which they often do. So it's not a new thing for them, or they literally don't understand the numbers they're looking at. But according to the census, white households lost ground to inflation, while inflation-adjusted income was little changed for other racial and ethnic groups, is what the census said. So, in other words, the article says racial groups shrank because white, along with the top and middle earners, lost wealth. White families lost wealth, while other racial groups remained stagnant. So, Black families remaining stagnant is not Black families having more money, like the New York Times claims. So they're just lying to you. But so we have seen the largest I just need to repeat it one more time. The largest increase in poverty in this country in a year ever recorded. Meanwhile, $4.5 trillion was pumped into Wall Street during the pandemic. The monetary supply in this country was increased by 20%, almost entirely in the hands of mainly the rich, because those $2,000 checks are not per person or per family or whatever, are not a lot. The big money went to the richest, as was covered in 2020 by the American Prospect. If you don't know them, they generally do very good work. But here's the article: how the Fed bailed out the investor class without spending a cent. Just announcing $4.5 trillion in future spending to support security markets was enough to keep owners of capital protected from the downsides of coronavirus. The Federal Reserve announced it an unprecedented rescue of corporate America. The stock market rose 30%. Thanks to the massive government subsidy, large companies like Boeing and Carnival Cruises were able to avoid taking money directly and sidestep requirements to keep employees on. They were able to sidestep something that should have just been giving a shit about humans. They were able to sidestep that. Intercept and American Prospect identified 49 companies that issued corporate debt since March 23rd, and hundreds of billion dollars they otherwise couldn't have secured so cheaply, providing a safety net to the investor class. And just to give you the precise how exactly that 4.5 trillion number is arrived at, among other measures, the CARES Act appropriated $454 billion to the Treasury Department's Exchange Stabilization Fund to be used as an equity stake in a series of Fed credit facilities. You can think of this as similar to a big bank. The ESF stake represents the deposit base, which can absorb any losses from Fed lending. The Fed can then lever those deposits up 10 to 1. Leverage those deposits up 10 to 1, the same way a bank loans well above its deposits, the same way they do fractional reserve banking. That created a $4.5 trillion, trillion with a T, money cannon to back up the promises of protecting the investor class, protecting the wealthiest in America. And meanwhile, here we're now seeing the ramifications of all that, pumping the money into Wall Street and not pumping it into the pockets of average Americans. And now you've seen the largest surge in poverty in the history of this country since records were kept like that. So thank you, Joe Biden, because Joe Biden sees the lesser of two evil, isn't he? It's just he's the good guy. He's the one looking out for us, isn't he? Absolutely, he is. What a good guy. He and his administration, because let's be honest, he's not making the calls. All right, since I wanted to get to a lot of articles, let's move on. Let's get to, again, this is some other good news from Biden. And by the way, that I'm not leaving Trump out. Trump during the pandemic, also a catastrophe. So it doesn't, take your pick, okay? They're the same fucking party. It's one party of worth trillions of dollars that work together to keep all of you out of making any actual democratic decisions. It is one party of the investor class, the corporate class. They are one party. Stop acting like they're two. Stop acting like there's a difference. Stop acting like that's your choice. That's not a fucking choice. It's just insanity. It's insanity mixed with stupidity. I like how you gotta mix it. You put a little less, a little stupidity. It's nice to have both. But okay. Next horrible decision. By the way, I'm getting to all kinds of things. I'm getting into. I'm going to get into what's going on in Libya with those massive floods. I'm going to get into NATO chief admitting that they lied to us about the Russian invasion and about the reasons behind it. The NATO chief has now admitted that. So that's not me saying that. That's the NATO chief has said that. I'm going to read you the quotes in a few minutes. But all right. So here is Tony Blinken, Secretary Tony Blinken just announced. This is just announced this today. He said that the President of the United States has appointed Penny Pritzker. What do you want about Joe Biden has never heard the name Penny Pritzker, or doesn't remember. He has heard her name, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but doesn't actually remember. He appointed her, really? Do you really think if you walked into Joe Biden, wherever he's watching Wheel of Fortune right now, and you said, who's Penny Pritzker? Do you think he'd go, oh, I just appointed her to Ukraine's economic recovery? Or do you think he'd go, I think probably the latter. I think if you could wake him up, probably the latter. So Tony Blinken says President of the United States has appointed Penny Pritzker as the U.S. Special Representative for Ukraine's economic recovery. That's what Ukraine needs right now, right? Is an American to just oversee their recovery, oversee how they're doing their recovery, which means selling off all their assets to some of the most powerful, richest entities in the world, such as BlackRock, which I've brought you those stories before now. The U.S. is buying up and selling off a variety of both Ukraine right now because it's now you break it, you buy it. But that's what the U.S. wanted. Well, actually, no, it's a little different. It's you break it, you have it. Well, that's interesting. The world, the U.S. is like a bull in a china shop, but everything they break, they get to keep for free. So Ukraine was you break it, it's yours. That's what the U.S. has done. Okay, so Penny Pritzker, Ukraine's economic recovery. She will work with Ukraine's government, international partners, and the private sector to accelerate Ukraine's economic transformation. Now, I know what you're asking right now. I know what you're wondering. You're like, if they appointed this woman to oversee Ukraine's economic recovery, where did they find her? Where did they find someone corrupt enough to really do this for us? Where do you go? What list do you look on to find someone who will do this kind of criminal activity? And be good at it, not just half-ass it, but really, really nail it. Really nail the chopping up and the selling off of Ukraine. Where would you find someone where do you think if they found her? Do you think I'd be interested to hear your comments on this. Do you think she came from a mutual aid group that they found working in the poorer areas of Brooklyn? Do you think she was someone working with Doctors Without Borders? She was just really, withdrawing bullets from people in Yemen as we support that genocide there. Do you think? Where do you think they found her? Do you think she's a scientist and she's really done great work on the harms that plastics are doing in the oceans? Well, I'll tell you where they found her. If you guessed any of those, then you were way off. And this is actually not recent, and it is mainstream media. This is not. I'm not getting this from some, tiny indie outlet. This is U.S. News and World Report. It's a completely U.S. propagandistic centrist outlet. Penny Pritzker's subprime problem. This is from 2013. The 2008 financial meltdown, fueled by excessive subprime lending, snared many Wall Street titans. But well before that, subprime lending tripped up a billionaire heiress who is now poised to be President Barack Obama's next commerce secretary. She didn't end up getting it, and I'm about to tell you why. But so she was selected by President Obama to be the commerce secretary. She's a billionaire heiress, scion of the Hyatt hotel fortune, and was the top executive of a holding company that owned a bank called Superior Bank. That bank failed in 2001 and was taken over by the government before being spun off to another bank. Superior paid the government $460 million to offset the claims against the FDIC's bank insurance fund. Yet the failure also left about 1,400 depositors out of $15 million. So 1,400 people who used this bank that she owned and ran lost a total of $15 million. Of course, that doesn't matter to her, and she's a billionaire, so she could actually pay them all their money. She could pay them their $15 million and not even notice it. She's a billionaire heiress. $15 million, it'd be the equivalent of like $20 to you or me. And she could pay that to them and, deal with the problem that she and her bank created by being involved in subprime lending. Now, subprime lending, I think people that try and spin that as a positive go, oh, well, they gave homes to people that didn't have good enough credit to get a home, and that's a nice thing they did, but it kind of blew up in their face. No. It is predatory lending. It is tricking people into signing things they don't understand. It's telling people that you're the bank and you're there to help them with this loan and it's going to be great. And you secretly know that their loan rate is going to go way up in the coming years after whatever period, whatever number of years before it shoots up, and they're not going to be able to afford it. And that happened across the country. And of course, that then spiraled into the 2008 collapse. But it's predatory. It's people manipulating or tricking other people into giving the bank lots of money that ultimately destroys their lives. Many of them. So she was the scion of the Hyatt Hotel is still the scion of the Hyatt Hotel fortune. She was and here's the thing. She was actually the top executive of the holding company and was on the bank's board at another point. So it's not like she was disconnected from what this bank was doing. She knew exactly what it was doing. Pritzker was also ready for it. This is how the oligarchs work. They're one nice big club. Pritzker was also Obama's top fundraiser during the 2008 presidential campaign. So, top fundraiser for Obama. I'm sure she was a pretty good fundraiser for Biden, too. I doubt she set that one out. So, top fundraiser for Biden. Probably a giant fundraiser for top fundraiser for Obama. Probably a giant fundraiser for Biden. A billionaire hotel heiress. A owner of a bank that had predatory practices, ultimately destroying people's lives and leaving 1,400 people without a lot of their savings. Superior Bank was privately owned by the interests of two wealthy families, the Pritzkers and the Dwormans of New York, whose fortune came from real estate. And what do you want to bet that when you make that kind of fortune from real estate, it's not all under good terms? I think some of it was probably super, super shitty. Just saying. Penny Pritzker was chairwoman of the bank from 91 to 94, also a board member on the bank's holding company. It appears that Superior Bank became a dumping ground for low quality and possibly predacious, which is predatory, mortgages. I don't think there's any possibly about it. He also contended that financial expert also contended that Superior Bank aggressively sought deposits beyond the insured limits, even when it was on the verge of failure, and that it filed flawed and clearly erroneous reports on its financial condition with federal regulators. So she's the head of a lying predatory bank that collapsed and stole money from a lot of people. She is a billionaire, which already means she's a sociopath to begin with. And she was Obama's top fundraiser in order for him to purchase his election. And then she, I'm sure, was a big fundraiser for Biden for him to purchase his election. Not that Trump didn't have people trying to purchase his election. I don't want to say Biden was the only. It's not like Democrats are the only ones trying to constantly purchase all of our elections. It's both of them because they're one party. Anyway, did I overdo that one? And now, so people in the Biden administration looked at this resume and they said she would be great to help Ukraine with its economic recovery. And they announced it today. She's in charge of Ukraine's economic recovery. Basically, she proved that she was a good oligarch. She's good by helping them purchase their elections. She's good by running predatory banks. And she's a billionaire, so she's in that group of sociopaths. And they were like, you have everything we're looking for. You would also be good at exploiting, breaking up, and selling off Ukraine. Here you are. Here's your new toy. Have at it. All right, next topic. Please make sure you click the thumbs up, click subscribe, click the bell icon. And if you want to become a member, it's at leecamp.locals.com. Leecamp.net should also get you there. And where did my name go? There it is. leecamp.locals.com. And the moment you sign up, you get my new ebook, Dangerous Ideas. You get that for free. You get all of these live streams for free, but you also get extra segments that I often do after the live stream is over. You get all of that. You're part of a community over on that Locals page. You can interact with people. You can post your own stuff. You can email me. It really is more of a community than it is just like Patreon, where you don't feel any community. You just chip in to help people do their thing. But with Locals, there's far more interaction. So I'd love for you guys to join up there. It's $6 a month, and that averages out to 38 cents an episode. So hope to see you over there. But all right, let's get to Libya and this amazing Reuters article, which Reuters doing the Lord's work of propaganda. I bet not a lot of people know that. The Lord is big into propaganda. Lord, does he love propaganda? I mean, she. I mean, they. I mean, something. Formerly known as the Gender X. Wait, now that's Twitter. Wouldn't it be great if Twitter renamed itself X because it was heavily slanted towards Malcolm X and his preachings? Just everything coming out of X was Malcolm X speeches cut into tweet-sized bites. Be wonderful. All right, so Libya. You guys probably know the first part of this, which is Libya has just been fucking destroyed by flooding. Tens of thousands, possibly well over 10,000 dead. The bodies washing up on the shore. It's just horrific on every level. Now, part of that is being covered, right? Your mainstream media will tell you there has been horrible flooding in Libya. That part they'll tell you. And here's a Reuters article that says the floods, what caused them and why are they so bad? And because I know so many of you are so smart in this stuff, what things do you think this Reuters article does not say caused or had an impact on these floods and how atrocious they were? Two big things that Reuters leaves out of their analysis of these floods, what caused them and why they were so bad. Because you can have floods in some areas where people survive. So it's not, there's two questions. What causes the floods and what causes the floods to be so horrific in terms of the damage they do. And for example, as you recall, in Indonesia, over 200,000 people died or something from the tsunamis in Indonesia. Now, if those tsunamis had hit Los Angeles, you would have had a lot of people die. but it probably would have been in like the single digits of thousands. It probably would have been a few thousand as opposed to 200,000 because it's a completely different infrastructure. In Los Angeles, everything's built out of, brick and stone and cement and everything. In a lot of Indonesia, things were built out of wood and I mean, there were even thatched huts and things like that. So infrastructure plays a huge role in how many die from floods and natural disasters. But okay, the Libya floods. Here's what they say as to cause them. The catastrophic flood has killed thousands of people in eastern Libya, city of Derna, sweeping away entire neighborhoods, residents, and washing many bodies out to sea. Thousands of people are missing. The mayor there says, it told a broadcaster there could be as many as 18 to 20,000 dead based on the number of districts hit. Throughout this entire article, there is no mention of climate change, climate crisis, or global warming. None whatsoever. They say there was a storm called Daniel that hit Libya. End of story. Nothing more to see here. Storm called Daniel. No climate crisis, no climate change, no global warming. Beyond that, there is zero mention of the U.S., France, NATO invasion that wrecked Libya, has caused gut-wrenching poverty throughout that country, has left it with completely destroyed infrastructure, competing warlords, open-air slavery, just horrific conditions compared to Libya was once back under Gaddafi. And this doesn't mean he was a perfect guy, but back under Gaddafi, Libya was the most advanced country in Africa, one of the most advanced. There was roughly zero poverty because everyone was guaranteed a certain living standard. They were people who got married were guaranteed housing and things like that. People who wanted to be farmers were guaranteed equipment and stuff like that. You could take out loans in Libya for 0% interest to facilitate starting businesses and stuff. All of this was under Gaddafi. The U.S. went in, raided the place, destroyed it. He's killed in the streets. And let's go a little further into why that is. Although, actually, we'll take a quick sidestep here for any of you out there who are still confused, even slightly confused about climate crisis, climate emergency, and everything else. And I get about an email every 3 days from someone who goes, Lee, you're so good at digging under this stuff and trying to figure it out. But why have you been misled on climate crisis? Why do you not understand that it's fake? I'm sorry, folks, but in everything, I listen to the facts, the scientists. I don't listen to mainstream media. I listen to amazing journalists that I have learned to trust over many years. But here is from, this is Inside Climate News, but that's not who they're going to be quoting. A 2013 study found that some 97% of peer-reviewed research on climate change was in agreement. 97% of peer-reviewed, and obviously peer-reviewed matters a lot because peer-reviewed means you couldn't just be bought off. There are scientists who are absolutely bought off. There are scientists who would take $5,000 to sign anything you put in front of them that says climate change is a hoax. They don't care. Oil companies, doesn't matter. Those people exist. This is a fucked up world. Those people exist. So without peer-reviewed, you kind of got nothing. 97% of peer-reviewed research on climate change was in agreement. Rapid climate change is happening beyond what would be considered resulting from natural causes, and humans are largely responsible. In 2021, though, that's not the end of it, though. That's just one. In 2021, another study, this one published in the Journal of Environmental Research Letters, analyzed 88,000 peer-reviewed studies. 88,000 studies on climate change and found that a jaw-dropping 99.9% of them came to the same conclusion. climate change is happening, and it's largely man-made, human-made. 99.9% of 88,000 peer-reviewed studies. And whenever you have people who try and say that climate change is a hoax or is wrong or whatever, they always go, look, this thing has been signed by 1,000 scientists saying it's not real or it's wrong or something. 1,000 scientists. Do you know how many millions of scientists there are around the world? So unless you have peer-reviewed, it doesn't fucking matter. 1,000 scientists is nothing. It's actually amazing they couldn't find more than that. That you couldn't buy off more than that. There are millions of scientists, and you couldn't buy off more than 1,000? That's actually pathetic. That's actually really sad. But when you look at peer-reviewed scientific studies, 99.9% of 88,000 reviewed all agree. So, and by the way, this is the most studied thing ever in the history of humanity. To continue from this article, it's important to note that the scientific process that governs climate science and any other academic science is founded in debate and skepticism, involving a peer review process in which experts in the field evaluate the research of their colleagues, attempt to recreate the results in their of the experiments, and seek to poke holes in the methodology. That's what peer reviewing is. You try to show that it's incorrect. You try to recreate it and see if it can be recreated. You actually try and prove it's false. That's what a peer review is. In that sense, the article continues, not only have climate models been extensively evaluated over the decades, but, quote, climate science is the most rigorously tested science of all history at this point. And that makes sense that it would be, because, yes, there are scientists around the world and they're all studying a million different things, but there's very little that is impacting all of us like at the same time. So one nation may be studying something that impacts them, but climate crisis is the entire world. So you have scientists around the world all looking at this same topic, and 99.9% of peer-reviewed journals say the same thing. It's amazing to me that even with, I know that a lot of the shit, the bots that attack me and stuff is paid for by big oil. I know a lot of it is not genuine human beings, but even with that shit, it's amazing anyone still falls for this garbage. And the idea that you're like, boy, Lee, you really are good at digging into the truth and finding the truth. But why is it you don't lick the ass of oil companies when it comes to climate crisis? Boy, Lee, why is it you don't just bow down to the largest, most polluting, most disgusting entities on this world stage and high five them on this one topic? What? What are you talking about? All right, so to go back to Libya, so why was it that the U.S., NATO, and France, and there's kind of some other reasons for France, which I've gotten into in the past, but at the moment, I'm going to get into how the UK has been enjoying the destruction of Libya. This was just published last year. 11 years after toppling Gaddafi, UK gets Libya's oil. BP controls exploration areas in Libya, covering nearly 3 times the size of Wales. UK company Petrofac would be more appropriate, convicted of bribery last year, has secured a new oil contract. I love how they're convicted of bribery and then they're like, let's give them another one. And sponsored new contract in Libya and sponsored British embassy there. Sponsored the British embassy there. UK is combining its interest in accessing Libya's oil with increasing military involvement. British officials have long sought to profit from oil in Libya, which contains 48 billion barrels of reserves, the largest oil reserves in Africa. BP is one of the few foreign oil and gas companies with exploration and production licenses in Libya. Its assets there were nationalized under Gaddafi. So, is that a reason that these countries might not like Gaddafi? He took the things they were making a lot of money from, and he said, hey, that money's not going to go to you. That money's actually going to go to the Libyan people. Do you think that upset the West? Upset France and the UK and the US and NATO countries? After years of tensions between the two countries, though, Prime Minister Tony Blair met Gaddafi in 2004 and agreed on a deal in the desert, which included $900 million of exploration and production in Libya's oil region. BP re-entered the country in 2007, but its operations were scuppered, sounds like a British word to me, by the War of 2011 when British, French, and U.S. forces, with the support of Qatar and Islamic militants, overthrew Gaddafi. Terrorism and civil war subsequently engulfed the country, and oil company operations were put on hold. So you may ask the question, if Gaddafi ultimately did cave to doing a deal with the UK on some of this oil, why would Western states still invade? Well, first of all those other reasons I gave you earlier about Gaddafi making a socialist state, but Gaddafi was also behind their backs trying to get off the US dollar, trying to create an African currency called the gold dinar. And also he was getting outside of the US banking controls. The moment that his government fell, like before he was even stabbed in the streets, like the second his government fell, they created a new central bank in Libya that was tied in to the SWIFT system, into the US government. And as Knight Rider in the chat just reminded us, Hillary, when she was asked about it, said, ha, ha, ha. We came, we saw, he died. And talking about killing Gaddafi. All right, so trying to get a lot of stories in. So let's move on. Although the rest of this, as well as the NATO chief has just admitted that they lied about the reasons for the Russian invasion of Ukraine. That, and I don't mean like a little half a slip up. I mean, like, he goes on and on about how extensively they lied to us about the Russian reasons for the invasion of Ukraine. I'm going to cover that right now at rumble.com/Lee Camp. It's free to go there and join me. Rumble.com/Lee Camp. Also, if you're watching on Locals, that will continue as well. Let's see. I'm putting the link in the chat there. So I hope you will join me over there so we can keep this going. But I'm going to get to that and other stories in just a second. Also, I'd love for you to become a member at leecamp.locals.com. And thank you to everybody who came to my live Zoom comedy performance yesterday. We had a great goddamn time, and I hope you all enjoyed it.